All right, welcome back, everybody. We are here with some great folks from NSAI talking about the Music Modernization Act. But right now, I want to go into what is NSAI, what do you guys do for songwriters, and how you got involved with it. Obviously, you're a songwriter, so inherently you would get involved with that here in Nashville. Well,
we're a purely songwriter-driven, songwriter board organization. That's just the world's largest not-for-profit advocacy and educational songwriter organization. We have Bart as our esteemed executive director. We have great staff. But other than that, it's all volunteers. It's all people like me that just volunteer to try to help, try to advocate for songwriting. That we run camps for amateur songwriters. We try to make, you know, good songs great, bad songs better, yeah, all the way up the line. And we're funded completely. We have the great thing about our advocacy efforts is we don't have our fingers in the royalty stream anywhere. Our entire organization is funded on events and on membership. So we can actually purely not be trying to protect a cushy job, not be trying to protect some kind of a structure that may or may not be right for this particular time and place in the music industry. All we do is work and worry about songwriters.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I always love to tell the story of how we were founded. It was 51 years ago, 1967, and I still find this amazing. We probably had 80 songwriters in my office today. It was one of those days. There were only 80 songwriters in Nashville. And we were the idea of a guy named Eddie Miller. He was a very appropriate gentleman. Eddie, including Hal David, is probably the only guy that ever wore a tie every day to writers' appointments. And Eddie said, don't complain about it, do something about it. So he was tired of these laws from 1909, trying to change those even 51 years ago. So he went around to the other writers and he convinced 41 others to form a trade group that was an advocacy voice for songwriters. Mary John Wilkin and Danny Dill. She wrote One Day at a Time. They wrote Detroit City. He wrote Detroit City. They wrote The Long Black Veil together. Ted Harris, Chris Christopherson, all the great writers of the day. And the very first issue they fought was to get writers' names on records. It happened sometimes, but it was not the industry practice. And it took about 3 years working with labels here and around the country, convincing publishers to get the writer information in time to put on the record. And in 1970, that became a thing globally. And why that was important, the writers went, you know what? Because there were other attempts at organizing songwriter groups. If we stick together and work together, we can change things. Now this is the big change, the Music Modernization Act, but we've changed a lot of other laws and created a lot of things to help this be a better profession. And as Steve said, whether you're a hobbyist or whether you're an aspiring professional or a professional, we have programs, services, events. We do 1,100 shows a year, songwriter shows, because we own the Bluebird Cafe. And through the Bluebird, and NSAI does Tin Pan South every April that you've been involved with at the station here for years, we do a lot of performances as well.
And you got some really cool stuff going on with the Bluebird. I'd love to touch on that really quickly.
Well, with a total budget of less than many of the lobbyists and the CEOs of other big music organizations, our total budget is less than the salaries of the heads of these organizations. We really spearheaded that changing the U.S. tax code. So now when songwriters sell their body of work, it used to be that their corporate partners paid the business rate, but the songwriter himself had to pay ordinary income again, even though he'd already paid ordinary income on it. Now we've actually started a cottage industry of songwriters who they work for a few years, and it's their retirement, it's their pay off the house, it's their kids go to college money, and they only pay the business rate, which is equal. It took us what, 3,000 individual visits to Congress, and the method is kind of cool because we have one thing that nobody else has. When we go visit and lobby, we have guitars. And we play songs. And we find out what their favorite song is, and we play it for them. And the people, the staff, who must lead a fairly dismal life in that rabbit warren. I mean, you'd think it was a big birthday party just because you're coming out and playing a couple songs.
Yeah.
So it's really been, it's an effective tool, and I think a lot of that is by Bart's design.
Well, the Bluebird you asked about, we acquired it. We started running it on January 1, 2008. We need to thank Amy Curlin, who founded it in 1982. You're going to be hearing news about the Bluebird movie. So we were a huge part of the show Nashville, which has ended. The lady that runs it now, she's a songwriter angel. Her name is Erica Wallum-Nichols. In the music industry, you want to be known by one name. Elvis, Cher, Bruce. All you got to say is Erica in the music industry. So Erica has undertaken this project. We've been shooting it for over a year. You probably read in the Tennessean, Taylor Swift and Craig Wiseman, about 6 weeks ago, she showed up at the Bluebird, and that was when we ended the shooting. So it's being edited now, and it'll come out in the not too distant future, and you'll be hearing more news about it. I've seen it, a lot of it, the part that's done, it's unbelievable. It's so emotional, and Erica, you know, there were 1,000 ways to do that movie wrong, and one way to do it right, which was from here, and she got it right, man. Wait till you see this thing.
I mean, the story of the songwriter is really one that is largely untold. There have been some great films put together that you guys have definitely been a part of, but maybe you could talk to us a little bit about just being a songwriter and tell people a little bit about how you came to Nashville and did all this and was writing.
Well, I've never had a real job, so I had a band when I was 12. We did some TV shows in Tampa when I was 14 or 15, and the producer said, you know, your band will be more popular. We're already playing once a month on TV. It was kind of like a American Bandstand kind of show. Your band will do better if you write your own songs. So I started writing my own songs, and I took a little trip to Memphis. We made a tape from an expensive mic that we borrowed.
What was the name of the band?
We were called the Paragons early on.
Of virtue.
And then Scepter Records, when we got a deal there, we were called The Promise. It was more in the Spanky Argand days, Beach Boys days. But anyway, I played a tape. The band got a record deal. We did a little traveling, made a few singles, and then I ended up staying in Memphis with Larry Rogers, who's still here in town. He has Studio 19. And I got a solo record deal, and suddenly a bunch of friends of mine in rhythm section got a chance to go to Miami to write for Atlantic, to be rhythm section and 2 writers for Atlantic. So I was there when they cut Layla and when they did Aretha there, you know, and we did a bunch of amazing things, got a bunch of cuts as a kid, and learned a lot. I had played with Charlie Rich on the road, and Jerry Wexler wanted me to sit down and listen to Charlie Rich songs with him so he could cut them on people like Betty LaVette and some of his R&B artists. So I got a real education and a real passion for knowing when it's the real stuff that people are really going to feel. And from then on, lived in Miami for a while and wrote some songs. And then in '83, I was sitting in Criterion, opened up a billboard, and saw a song with my name on it that was a top 10 record that Marty Robbins wrote. And so I called my friend Larry and I said, Marty Robbins cut our song. And he said, yeah, I've been trying to find you. I said, well, here I am. So I won a BMI award, and my wife said, you're not a songwriter. We don't live where songwriters live. We need to move to New York or LA or Nashville. So we packed up everything, 8 rooms of furniture, 2 kids, 8 and 4, and with no money and no gig, moved here in a U-Haul and rented an apartment. And since then.
Now, how many #1s later are we?
I've had 10 #1s and 25 top 10s and 300-400 cuts.
That's incredible. So I got a question. Coming back to the Music Modernization Act, if everything changed to be the way that it is now, do you think that you would have taken that leap to move to Nashville to write songs knowing how hard it is to be a songwriter? Is it just in you, or could that be discouraging? Well,
you kind of have to do it. A very famous copyright law professor from Vanderbilt once said that most copyright law professors say that you don't really have to worry too much about the royalty structure because these people have an addiction and they just do it anyway. So you don't have to worry about it. And to some extent that's true, but in a word, probably no. But the thing is, nobody who moves here knows how hard it is. You don't really know how hard it is until you're here and you see the level of competition and the level of talent. Like, I thought I was a guitar player when I lived in Miami, and then I moved here. And, well, I'm not a guitar player. I'm a songwriter, guitar player. So probably not, because the promise of songwriting at that point in time, which is what we're working to make it happen again. The promise is, if you're really good and really smart and you really work hard and you really network and do the best you can, you can make a decent living. And that basically songwriters not looking to get rich or famous. In fact, I'm kind of running away from fame sometimes. Yeah. But we want to send our kids to college, and we'd like to be able to buy a house and pay for a wedding. And so no, a lot of people would not. I think we're losing, right as we speak, a lot of great talent because they have the kind of intellect. I mean, I turned down a bunch of scholarships and stuff. They have the kind of talent and intellect where they could do anything, and so they do anything instead of this.
Songwriting's a gift. Look, there's lots of artistic gifts. I think even an artist that writes the song, even the best one there is, like Taylor Swift would tell you, when she's writing, it's a different part of that gift than when she's performing the song. I think it's akin to painters. It's beautiful, it's dysfunctional, it's very special. And if the question you asked was, before the Music Modernization Act, we believe we lost about 90% from the heyday of working songwriters who were paying the living. So you certainly wouldn't be answering the question that it was my career. And the Music Modernization Act, we don't want to make any illusions, is not going to completely fix that. Part of it's the growth of streaming. It's gone from nothing to several $billion a year. But if we do the Music Modernization Act and streaming continues to grow, I believe it's safe to say it's a career that might make sense again for many more people than it does right now.
I mean, for example, the disparity between the sound recording copyright and the song copyright. If a person is an independent artist and they make the record and they're the artist and they pay for it themselves and they own the label and they get a reasonable amount of streams, 1 million streams, they make a pretty good buck. They do okay. The song, if they use a songwriter to collaborate, the songwriter won't nickels, dollars. Nothing.
I saw a tweet from Peter Frampton where he was talking about his, of course, huge hit, Baby I Love Your Way.
Yeah.
And he said that it got something like 40 million streams. They got a check for $1,000 for a whole year of it being streamed to everybody. The writing part of it, right. Good thing to point out. But you know, you think of these huge songs, bigger than life, and the songwriters just are having a tough time right now. And you can tell how important this is to people here in Nashville in the music industry, because there was CSAC who came in with an amendment on the Music Modernization Act that they ended up working with you guys and taking away. But talk to me just about how that exploded on social media. Because well, Lady Antebellum, Brothers Osborne, Maren Morris, everybody.
Let me first say, we love CSAC. This was never driven by CSAC. It was driven by their parent corporation. But I think what's analogous is this profession has been out on the ocean with no hope. And a life raft called the Music Modernization Act has floated by. And when they believed that that might be taken away, especially with somebody they knew, 10.5 million people weighed in on that in a couple of weeks. It's passed us. It's actually helped move one senator who was going to be able to stop this bill to support it. But I got to tell you, that's how important it was to songwriters.
Yeah, I'm a CSAC writer and was highly pulled and torn during that period, because you don't want to fight with your family. And CSAC ended up doing the right thing, but unfortunately there was a lot of pressure, and there were some hurt feelings, and hopefully in time it'll all heal, and we'll be back to the music family we've always been.
Absolutely.
Let's put it this way. So songwriters that came here and had a career even 10 years ago and before that, the rules changed. What if you were a baseball player and they completely changed the rules of the game? It was one strike, it was one out, it was 6 people in the outfield and you got 6 at-bats. That's not what you signed up for. So what has happened throughout history, I did sort of a Barton study just for myself a few years ago of changes in the distribution of creativity through history. And you can go back to Gutenberg and the printing press. And there's always 3 sort of phases. Here's the new way to change the art. So now there's a printing press. So that's phase 1. There's the new invention. There's the new distribution method sometimes. But you still got to put every line of type in there. You still got to roll the ink across it and feed 1 sheet of paper at a time. Stack all the copies, turn them over, and staple the book. It's still a long process. Then they improved the invention. So digital went from the internet to streaming. We're between phase 2 and phase 3, and now there's automatic paper feeder, there's inkjets, and it staples the Bibles, or the book in Gutenberg's case, and it stacks them up in the corner. But phase 3 is everybody has those, and they need the content. And we're seeing that with mobile phone companies. Amazon doesn't make money on their music. They're trying to sell Prime membership. Content drives other things. Same thing with Google, same thing with Apple. And so I'm optimistic that we're going to come now to a greater value for content, and the Music Modernization Act certainly is going to force that a little bit. So we're happy about it.
Yeah. Now, we're going to toss the break right now. Again, we want your phone calls. Feel free to call in about the Music Modernization Act, any questions you might have. And after the break, I say that we talk about where this is in Washington, because a lot of support from a lot of different people, but still a few hurdles to get over.
Yep.
So we'll be right back after this.